welcome back to Reunited States. We are back after a few-week hiatus. We are, of course, the podcast that aims to bring back civil discourse to our national dialogue. From Los Angeles, California, my name is Tyler Ehrig.
And back in Manchester, New Hampshire, I am Jesse Saywell.
Jesse, how was your vacation?
It was fantastic. So thank you all for your patience in getting back to this. I was in Scotland and Northern Ireland and then Ireland. And really, really amazing, insightful trip. Had shite weather, as they would say, throughout most of Scotland. And then like the best weather in 3 years throughout most of Ireland. So it was a fantastic trip. Really loved it, but glad to be home, glad to be back and be able to talk about, what's going on in the country and the world. Did I miss anything while I was gone? I mean, what happened?
Nothing. Actually, you missed nothing.
No.
This nothing exists, clearly.
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened. And, I will say this before we get into this episode, I do have to make a counterclaim for the listeners of this podcast. In case anyone has heard, we would like to dispel any rumors that Jesse nor I are on the Epstein list. In fact, I don't even think there even is one. And I'll have you know right now, if there happens to be one, which there might not be, and for some reason you see our names on that list, which you won't, but you might, just so you know, it was all Chuck Schumer's fault. He put our names there, if they're there, but they might not be on the list. That may or may not exist, but probably doesn't. But if it does, it's Chuck Schumer's fault. Chuck Schumer, come defend yourself.
Hashtag fuck Chuck. No, please, come on, Chuck. Come on, defend yourself. You won't rest.
Chuck, we love you, but we don't. We want you to come on this podcast.
Well, come on, Chuck. Come on, man.
Oh, man.
Oh, God, if you're not familiar, we've been ribbing Chuck Schumer for quite some time about his inspirational speeches protesting the Trump administration.
One might say he is our Obama.
Apparently, I don't know. Come on, Chuck.
He's our boogeyman. Come on,
something
Chuck.
about Chuck.
I know you did it, Chuck.
People named Chuck. You've got Chuck Schumer. You've got then Chuck Grassley, who was born like the day the Titanic sank.
Jesus
I'm not
Christ.
kidding.
An omen for sure. Fuck all these Chucks.
He's 90 years old in the Senate. He still hasn't declined that he's going to run for re-election again. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely insane. I'm not even sure that Chuck Grassley knows who he is. Senator Leahy retired 4 years ago. Why didn't you? Anyway.
It's going to be what was it? Dead Silence, that movie with the ventriloquist dummies. Chuck Grassley's he's going to run up for election, but it's going to be his aide, using him as a ventriloquist dummy because he's been dead for years.
Dead Silence is actually the new movie about Mitch McConnell. It's just Mitch McConnell at a podium. And midway through.
Yeah, I mean, when he does talk, it does seem like I don't see his mouth moving at all.
Oh, God. Anyway. So
we have a lot of things to talk about. A lot of things to catch up on. We have a few things that I think we're going to focus on in this episode. I think first and foremost, everyone wants to hear about it. Everyone's talking about it. It's Jeffrey Epstein and his mysterious list that may or may not exist, that may or may not have Trump's name on it. But if it does, it's definitely Obama's fault because he totally wrote it in and then put it into the evidence and never touched it. Everyone knows the story. We are both assuming that everyone knows the story by now. It's been all over the news. It's been probably the biggest headline we've seen in probably years, to be honest with you. It is so crazy. But we're going to talk about this with our own kind of spin on it. I want to look at the handling of this Epstein news through the patented strategic lens that we like to look at things with, because yes, there are facts, and yes, there are things that people love to mention. Oh, Trump's on the list. Yes, he's a pedophile or whatever. Sure. I mean, all that stuff might very well be true. But we're not going to beat a dead horse by just continuing to mention that and mention the possibility or probability of that happening. Instead, let's look at how people are addressing this and how they are looking at how they are handling the Epstein situation, starting with the president himself. And I'd like to start with maybe a bit of a hottish take on this, because looking at how when this information dropped and Trump's reaction to it, I think most political commentators have been in relative unity, in the sense that they have been pretty unified in saying that this is Trump has been handling this worse than any scandal that has been presented to him in his political career. Like, he has flubbed the answer to this time and time again, worse than any situation that has come to him. And I think a lot of commentators are identifying correctly how kind of strange that is for someone who is purportedly always been quite fantastic at deflecting and addressing things. He's called Teflon Don for a reason, that it feels like he's just invulnerable to scandals. And it's just because he's such a, swallow my soul when I say this, but he is such a great speaker, in the sense where he is so good at just dispelling things, even when it seems ridiculous. He is so good at dispelling things and just using whataboutism in such a successful manner. But many people are saying how he's flubbing this and how he's going off the rails, talking about Obama, talking about all these things. And I'd like to remind people of something, and this is kind of where this take comes in. I'd like to remind people that Donald Trump is not an idiot. And I think it's important to remind people of this, because it's so easy to be like, he's a crazy old man, he doesn't know what he's talking about, he's being nuts, he's finally off the rails. No, I don't think that's true. I mean, yes, he's crazy, and he says nonsensical things, and he's totally illiterate during a lot of hours of the day, but he is not an idiot. He is not an idiot. Anything that he does, the things that he says, this is all by design. And I think we all need to remind ourselves of that, is that everything he does is by design. It has a purpose. When he says Obama made the list, or Hillary made the list, or whatever, that is by design. He's not just screaming nonsense into the void. He is not just losing his mind, saying things that no one will ever believe. People are going to believe it. He's not saying it for no reason. He knows that it will be effective to certain people. He knows that is going to help him. And I think it will help him. I think saying these things will help him, and it's all the more concerning when you look at everything else that he's doing. All the deflections that he's doing. He's pointing to the economy. Everything is by design. The ICE raid's all by design. He is now talking about taxation policy. The tariffs are coming back. He's now returning to discussing the tariffs, and he's starting more, trade issues with certain countries. All of it by design. To me, this is by no means a unique take or an original idea by any means, but I do believe that the truth behind how much he's trying to deflect on this is representative of how concerned he is of these files, of what might be on there. I don't think it's nothing. It can't be nothing, because Trump is a smart man. He wouldn't do this if it was nothing. He would not spend this much time saying things that he knows sounds ridiculous to many people if there was no purpose for it. He wouldn't say crazy stuff like Obama wrote it in, if there wasn't an explicit purpose, if it wasn't going to explicitly help him. So if you ask me, him saying these things, him fueling these conspiracies, is the confirmation that whatever is in these files is damning enough, is so damning that he would be willing to go on such a limb to reignite conspiracies about the far left. I don't think he would do that for nothing. I guess that's the main thing. I do not believe he would do that for nothing, and he would do it just because he's crazy Donald Trump and he hates the left and he wants Obama to be the boogeyman of the world. I don't think so. I don't think he would do that just for nothing. I think he does that because he has seen the files, or someone has told him what the files are, what's in them. One of those.
Yeah, he doesn't read. He doesn't read.
This is true. He watched the files. He listened to them in an audiobook. But he knows what's in them. He knows what's there, and the desperation is by design because he knows that whatever is in those files is dangerous enough to him that he is willing to reignite these crazy conspiracies that are just like, he knows they're it's a far reach. He knows it's a shot in the dark probably, but he also knows it's been effective in the past. He knows it's been effective. He's banking on that, but he knows that it's a risk, but the risk is worth it to him because of whatever's in there. That's my strategy take on Trump's response. I don't think it's crazy. I don't think he's just a nutso guy who's just firing off on crazy dementia cylinders. I don't think so. I think this is by design, and the kind of like the far-reaching things that he's saying is purely reflective of his desperation and the whatever damning evidence is in these files.
I think I agree with what you just said there. To go a step further on it, though, I think that it is pretty clear that if it was as what he said for years and years and years, that the Epstein files were going to show Bill Clinton, the Clintons, Hillary Clinton, Obama, all of these Democrats were involved in some, weird sex cabal with underage people, obviously we know he would have already released it. And I think the fact that he doesn't want to release it is why Democrats now are suddenly like, yeah, let's have him release it. Because I think there was a concern for many of them, in the same way that Trump internally would be concerned about this. It's like the car that he never expected to actually catch. He's the dog, but he doesn't even know what to do with it. He has the opportunity to show the files, to show whatever information we have, but he doesn't want to do it. And it's one of two things. It's either it is something potentially damning to him or harmful to him. I'm not expecting that it's some sort of smoking gun. We should be clear, how can you have more of a smoking gun than what is already out there? We're already getting all this information. There was this report now that there's this letter that the Wall Street Journal has published. Wall Street Journal, owned by Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox News.
Who's now being sued by Donald Trump. Who's now being
sued by Trump for putting out this letter supposedly typewritten by Trump, but then signed, and then he drew a naked woman on there with, his signature basically being her pubic hair. Am I surprised? Of course not. It's Donald Trump. No one's surprised by this, but he wrote it to Jeffrey Epstein, in theory, or reportedly. And we have pictures of them now, Epstein at his wedding to Marla Maples. You have, recordings of the two of them talking about women at a Miss America contest. You've got all the evidence that you could possibly need on the right to be clearly Trump was in with Epstein. This was a good friend of his. I don't know if there's any more than that. They certainly had a falling out at some point in time that, whatever that was for. I certainly don't think it was about underage women because it's Donald Trump. I think it was about something else relating to real estate, from what I understand. But I'm not even sure that there is more damning stuff in there. I'm not even sure that Trump is in the Epstein information. it very well may be that it actually is insanely boring. That there's not a lot of stuff, that there's just some people left and right. But Trump, for so long, has fueled his base to believe that the Epstein files would reveal this great conspiracy among members of the elite. That they will not be satiated by some sort of boring list. They're not going to be satiated.
Do you think that the files would reveal anything more than what's already been revealed through his like little contact book that we've already seen the Clintons on there, and we've seen Trump on there, along with like other like celebrities and stuff like that. Like we had that years ago, and that was supposed to be a smoking gun. That, oh my God, he had his little black book, the contact list of all of his best buddies, and it included high-ranking Democrats, Republicans, including Trump himself. But like that obviously didn't result in any sort of, you know, ostracization or like consequence to Trump or really anybody on that list, to be honest with you. Clintons didn't really see consequence. Granted, they don't really have much to lose. They're, you know, all gone from the political sphere, at least in terms of elected seats. But like, because I do believe that there is something damning to Trump on there just because of just based off of his behavior. I guess my question is because you're right. I think that like, I don't think smoking guns exist for Trump anymore. He can get shot. He can get shot by a gun, and it would just bounce off of his chest because there's just nothing that can fucking put him down politically at this point. We've seen.
I mean, he did really almost get shot by a gun. Like that's the craziest thing, is that, you know, this is just wild.
Yeah, but like what could possibly be in there that would harm him, if anything? Like what could it be?
Evidence that he participated in exploits with underage women, or potentially did, visits to Epstein Island or whatever the hell it is. But I want to say very quickly, I don't think that that's there. And the reason why I don't think that's there is, one, there are people who actively want to release this information. Now, I'm not sure if they've seen it or not, but there's obviously a split within the intelligence community that he has put together about whether to release this. And if there was something about that, I realize that I am skeptical of how good Democrats are at using information, and being political. But you're telling me that for 4 years the Biden administration had access to these files and read over them, and you're telling me that they would have had access to something that could have sank their primary competition, something that could have, you know, indicted Trump on Jeffrey Epstein, and they didn't use it?
I can believe that.
I realize that I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe it's true. I mean, Democrats and certainly the Biden administration had the political instincts of a shell on the beach, you know, like easily just washed away. But that's tough to stomach. If they did have that information, if they did have any access to that, then for God's sake, they should have used it.
I agree that they should have, yes, by all means. I think I know exactly why they didn't, though. And I think the answer to that is that it also damns them. We know that...
You think it damns Biden?
No, not Biden. No,
like,
not
Biden knows
not
nothing.
Biden specifically. I don't think Biden specifically has any problem with it. But I think there are Democrats in that file. I'm all but certain there is something about Clinton on there.
Oh, there certainly are. Yes.
If there's Clinton on there, I guarantee you there are going to be other top-ranking both Democrats and Republicans in those files that may be equally or similarly damning to them as this information that might be to Trump. And I think this is not a Biden decision to not release the files. It's not like him singly saying, like, I'm not going to do this. This is a Democratic institution decision to not have released the files during the 4 years that we could have when Biden was in power, because Democrats as a whole, the DNC, is incapable, or rather, they refuse to be a martyr for the cause of bringing down Trump. They will not shoot themselves to shoot Trump, if that makes sense. Like,
No,
they will not bring
you're
down
right,
the
and you make
They
a
would
good
rather
point.
keep him, or they would rather keep him around and not, release information that will damn him to the ground, if it means they get to also retain the security of their own people. I think that they're selfish in that sense, but I do think that is precisely why nothing was released before this time, when we could have done it.
And that's a totally valid thing to feel. And in fairness, that's from our personal conversations. It's one of the reasons why I said I don't expect the Democrats to be fully and uniformly aggressive in trying to get this released. Because I suspect that it will look badly on everyone.
Right.
I don't think that this is a one-party thing. There were people of both parties and both political persuasions and whatnot, celebrities.
Yeah, there's like nonpartisan people on
there's
here.
All kinds
we hear
of
about Stephen
non-political
Hawking
people
and like
that are,
all this weird stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
and in fairness, let's just clarify and make sure that people understand that if the Epstein list, if there is a list, if there's a list of people, or if there's, files that include people, chances are, and by chances are, we're talking 99.99999%, unless Jeffrey Epstein wrote some sort of list of, like, fucked a child on this day, like, the vast majority of these people who will be involved were simply involved with a big shot guy who had a lot of money. They are not pedophiles. They are not people who were, going to Epstein's island. But, Prince Andrew, I mean, why is it always, like, in these stories, it's Epstein, it's Donald Trump, and it's Prince Andrew? Prince Andrew, who we know has been behaving inappropriately to the point where the crown just has kind of ushered him off into the corner.
yeah, that's also something to note. It's that, like, he was incriminated, like, by, like, association, right? Like, he had the same degree of association as Trump or Clinton or whoever, any of these people have also had through the little information that we had, and yet he was like fucking booted from every social circle by the crown. And like,
the difference being there were actual accusers of Prince Andrew. There are like accusers who have come out and said he assaulted me at Jeffrey Epstein's island or whatever, whatever. There haven't been those same accusers. There have been plenty of accusers of Trump, but not related to Epstein per se directly. And as such, that's I guess what the difference is.
But still, like, you gotta like see, like, there is clearly a difference in the way this is handled.
And there's smoke. There's smoke all left and right around.
Like, there's plenty of accusers of Trump of varying degrees.
Otherwise,
yeah, and
yes.
yet, like, for some reason, it's just like we refuse to, we refuse to let go of people in power that we want to support or have supported before, even when guilt is looking them in the face. For some reason, I don't even want to speculate at this point, it's just for some damn reason, we are incapable of letting these people go. And it wasn't the case, like, before. This is, like, relatively recent kind of, like, shift in our, like, view on misgivings, right, of, like, wrongdoings by people in power.
Yeah, I mean, Trump changed the game. He did, because he won anyway. And he changed the game by refusing to apologize, refusing to acknowledge what he did. For years, it was like, you have to apologize. If you've been caught doing something that the country can see very obviously that you did it, you have to apologize. Trump doesn't apologize. He does not, grab him by the you-know-what. That whole thing, he issued kind of a half-baked, like a weak sauce apology but then also was just like, it's locker room talk. And
Yeah, and I was going to say, he gave just enough, like, keywords and allowed his base to defend him for him. So, like, he didn't have to do any of that legwork. He just gave a few responses just to say he said something. And the people who did the legwork of defending him were his supporters, right? Both people in power and, of course, like the MAGA base itself. They're the ones that did all the legwork of defending J6, of defending his inappropriate actions towards women, all that stuff. Like, again, when he was running in 2016, and we were looking at the, grab my genitals, comment and all these other things, it wasn't like him being faced with these questions, although he was. It were his base, and his base were the ones that were like basically forming this like massive shield around him and doing the dirty work for him, right? Quite literally a personal army that was like, no, it's locker room talk, it's locker room talk. I heard that phrase more from regular people's mouths than I ever heard it from his mouth.
And the thing that's interesting, we talk about it a lot, like his base is not enough to win him elections. The real thing, and that's the indictment of Democrats, right? Like, you became so unlikable that you lost to Donald Trump twice. After everything we've known about this man, you have become so unlikable that people in the middle who decide the elections, the people who swing back and forth, those people chose Trump on two separate occasions, roughly a decade apart, over you because they don't like you. They don't like the way that you act. They hate you more than they hate him. And I can't tell you how many Trump supporters I've talked to who are like, hey, I remember leading up to last election, I don't want to vote for Trump again. I hate it. I don't want to vote for Trump again. But if the argument is only that Trump is a dick and the other alternative is I have to vote for the Democrats, what choice do I have? Again, I don't advocate that. I don't agree with it. I disagree wholeheartedly. But that is how a lot of people felt and continue to feel about Trump. They hate Democrats more than they hate Trump. And so the interesting thing about this Epstein files aspect is that you've got a portion of the far conservative base, the people who have never wavered from Trump whatsoever, who are starting to be like, wait a minute, you said that this is a smoking gun. You said that the Epstein files or whatever was the evidence of this big, broad conspiracy of Democrats being horrible and being the, Satan cabal or whatever. You've been saying this for years. If there's nothing in those files, they're not going to be satiated. They're going to believe that Trump is hiding something. That's where we're at. He sold them a conspiracy theory. You can't sell people a conspiracy theory and then give them nothing. Eventually, they have bought in that there is more there. They're not going to accept nothing. And that's where I feel like Trump is just like, this has to go away. It's either, as you said, that there is evidence, that there is something that's damning in there for him, or there's really nothing in there, or it's just damning to both parties. It's going to, throw a whole bunch of people in there, probably some people that Trump cares about, or some people that Trump has had as donors or whatnot, Well,
I think that's the unique thing about Donald Trump. When you compare him to, say, Biden, right, or really any Democratic leader, Trump will care, and this is my opinion, but I think this is a pretty safe one here, is that Trump will care if he is on the Epstein files in some incriminating way, right? If there's incriminating information about him in these files, Trump will care much less if there are other Republicans in the files than Biden or another Democrat in power would care about fellow Democrats being on that list. I think there being I think Trump would not go through all the hoops and bounds of defending or trying to push away the situation if Trump were not in these files, but other Republicans might be. I think he would care much less. I don't think, actually, I would argue he would probably not care at all.
See, I don't think he gives a shit about other Republicans, congressional Republicans. He'll be happy to throw them under. I do think there are other people who could be potentially indicted in this, or people who could be guilty by association or whatever in it, that he cares about. And
yeah, but I'm thinking just politically, strictly from a political sense, Republicans and Democrats.
I agree, but I think he cares about, and the fear that he would have in that situation is, let's say, I'm not going to use an example because that's unfair to throw out any sort of random example with Jeffrey Epstein. That's a terrible thing to do. But let's say that there's a fellow celebrity that Donald Trump is very close with, has been donating to him for years or whatnot. Trump releases these files and that person gets out in the open. That person gets thrown into the crossfire. Trump is smart enough to understand that that person will all of a sudden start talking about Trump. Because the best deflection point that they would have in that point would be, let's deflect blame onto the president because it's my best bet to detract from this hate storm against me. So
for best case, all he does is not pay him, not donate, which is already going to be a problem for Trump.
And Epstein's, the Ghislaine Maxwell or Ghislaine Maxwell, however the hell you say her crazy name. I see this. I saw this earlier. It's the Justice Department is trying to schedule a meeting with Maxwell. The Justice Department is trying to schedule a meeting with somebody who's incarcerated? What? Her schedule is too busy with, what are we talking about? That's such bullshit. Clearly Maxwell has things that she could say that would be damning.
Hey, man, she's too busy at the gym, at the prison gym, man, getting those gains.
That's ridiculous. And so the idea that, the Attorney General can't just schedule a meeting at visitation hours to show up and interview somebody? Give me a break. Give me a freaking break. Somebody knows something. You're right. There is more to this story than nothing, and probably some of it doesn't look good on Trump or doesn't look good on people that could also potentially involve Trump. But even if it's nothing, even if there is literally nothing, that's bad for Trump because his base will not trust him. And so he's trying everything right now to deflect. I mean, and, we see this cult of personality. Speaker Johnson, a week and a half ago, was I do think that we need to be more forthcoming and, kind of criticize Trump. And now he's adjourning Congress early so there's no vote to release these things. Now, it's gonna happen. I don't care if they're putting it off till September or what. These people are not letting go of Jeffrey Epstein and that information. So, they're clearly trying to buy time, but when they come back from their nice little cushy holiday that Congress takes, because their jobs are so hard, oh my God, they must take, 2 months off, dear God. When they come back from this, they're not going to just ignore this or let this go. Trump is betting that they're going to let it go. They're not going to. And so all I can say is that it's interesting watching Trump continue to try to fight with his base. We've never seen him not be able to coerce or strong-arm his base into agreeing with him or letting something go or focusing on anything. I don't think this nonsense with Obama is going to change anything. And if you were not familiar, Trump basically in the Oval Office turned a question about Epstein into saying that Obama is guilty of treason and he should be arrested. What a disturbing place we live in. Again, we're talking about arresting people. And they're going to, people are going to say, oh, well, the Biden went after Trump. No, Biden didn't. Biden picked the weak sauce man, Merrick Garland, the weakest of weakest people who didn't go after Trump in the way that he should have because he was worried about the optics of it. He was worried about how it would look. And he didn't go after him the way he should have because if he had, Donald Trump probably wouldn't be president right now. Because if we had gone after him for the crimes that Donald Trump did commit, he did commit felony crimes. He was convicted of felonies, but he had a lot worse ones waiting for him that we never saw a day in trial. All we saw was bullshit in trial.
I think along the same vein, if the Biden administration had released the Epstein files, if they were able to, first off, if they were legally able to release those files, if it was within their power to do so, I think doing that would have that same effect of like we would be looking at a very different administration right now. If what we believe to be on there, something incriminating, something damning, how damning we don't know, but there's obviously something. If that something was released, we might be looking at a very different administration. And I think the only reason that didn't happen, beyond any legal limitations that may or may not exist, I'm not like a super expert in what may have prevented them from releasing it outside of their decision. You know, like there may be some rules, I don't know. But if there isn't, then I am very convinced that like the only reason that didn't happen was because the Democrats were like, nope, sorry, can't release this because we care more about protecting our own and protecting the status quo of our party than ensuring Trump doesn't get elected and ensuring fascism doesn't come to the United States or whatever. You know, like it's sad, it's infuriating, but I do wholeheartedly believe that is the reason why it wasn't released any sooner than, or even talked about any sooner than now.
Either that or because, and to Biden's credit, he was so determined on the Justice Department being independent of the executive branch, you know, hence why he chose Merrick Garland. But he was so determined to do that he didn't even know what was on the files because he was he was never going to use them politically one way or the other because he just didn't believe that was right.
Because newsflash, Joe Biden's a good fucking person.
Yeah, in general, Joe Biden does care about the precedent of government and the way that, you know, government should be run. I think those days are done. I think that Biden, you know, if Democrats somehow find a way to survive Trump and get back into the Oval Office, I do think that what you'll find going forward is that the Justice Department is no longer going to be an independent institution. Maybe they will, but at a certain point, it's like...
Not with this administration, it won't.
In the aftermath of this, you've got to find a way to... I think that Democrats are going to realize, wow, we've been doing, like, we're playing the game, and they're not playing the game. And we've been saying this for years, you know, like Republicans are playing the game, and they're cheating, and they're winning, and whatever. You see it now, like, with this redistricting thing. Republicans in
Perfect
Texas...
example. I was hoping you would talk about this.
Republicans in Texas are talking about redistricting in the middle of the decade, which is bullshit, for the record.
Mm-hmm. Completely political, against all policy and law. To
try to add seats, you know, to redistrict and gerrymander to allow them to win seats in Texas.
And you know what's funny about that? It's like, we know that historically the redistricting ploy has always been about getting seats. It's supposed to not be, obviously. It's supposed to be about ensuring that there is no like siloing or like political ghettoing of certain communities, right? But we know it's all about seats, right? But it used to be that's not, we don't say that. You know, they don't say that, they just do it, and we kind of don't hear about it, so we live with it. That's why gerrymander, salamander, right? That's why they look all fucking weird. But like, It used to be that we don't say that because, like, if we were to say that, that would be kind of admitting that we are doing something for nefarious purposes, and that could be damning to our political life, right?
Yeah.
But what did Trump do when he's speaking to Greg Abbott? He literally said, like, verbatim, says, "Do this so we can get more seats."
And this is the thing with Trump, like. We keep using the term, historically we've used the term, saying the quiet part out loud. There is no quiet part anymore. They don't have a quiet part. Nothing is quiet anymore. Nothing is quiet except Trump when he's asked about Jeffrey Epstein. But the reality is, and I suspect you and I agree on this, yeah, I hate gerrymandering, and I applauded California under former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Hard for me to even believe that I could agree with Arnold Schwarzenegger on anything, but Schwarzenegger led a process that led to an independent commission that writes the districts for California. And the reasoning was that for the decade prior to that, there had only been one congressman in California who had lost their seat, like an incumbent who had lost their seat from party to party in all of the seats because they were so heavily gerrymandered. But we're at a point now where, like, Democrats can't keep playing by the rules and expect to ever be able to retake power. And so, yeah, I'm in favor. If Republicans do it, and Beto O'Rourke made an interesting thing. He was like, why are we fucking waiting on Republicans to do it? Just do it. And honestly, yeah, I say just do it. They're threatening? Fine. Democrats in trifecta states, like California, go out there and redraw the lines. Will it get challenged in court? Sure. Will it probably fail because of the crazy Republican Supreme Court? Sure. But we have to do something.
It's funny. Like, I originally was like, no, I disagree. Like, I don't think we should be fighting fire with fire. I think that's a very dangerous road to go on. But I kind of changed my opinion upon hearing this because I had an idea when you said Supreme Court, and so I want to run something by you here. If the Supreme Court, if let's say California were to jump the gun and start redistricting outside of their, outside of the decade, point where they're supposed to, and it were challenged, it goes to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court strikes it down, as they almost definitely will, saying, yeah, this is totally, like, you can't do this. Would that then would we then be able to use that to prevent Texas from doing that? Because we jumped the gun, and even if it was defeated, which is fine and probably for the best, to be honest, if we were to do this, get defeated, that Supreme Court opinion would then become a foundation to prevent any other state from doing this, including Texas.
I
What do you think about
think that I think it's interesting because we just don't know where the court lies on this. We don't know. There has been already a battle right now going on over redistricting in Louisiana. And the court basically kind of kicked the can down the road, per se, and said that they are postponing the answer on the Louisiana redistricting until next term. So after this summer, the Supreme Court will finally do this. But the Louisiana legislature basically created a black majority district as a means of taking black voters from other competitive districts and moving them all into one. And you may be saying that and saying, wow, that sounds good. No, the problem is you want diversity in districts. You want to be able to show competitive representation throughout. And so I don't know. They punted on it this last time, so you don't know where the Supreme Court lies. But in theory, precedent would tell you that if Democrats did it and it got rejected for political purposes, that would establish precedent that might lead the Supreme Court to say, yeah, we'll just follow whatever the lower court's decision is on this issue. I don't know. The Supreme Court is so hard to predict anymore because you just don't know who's doing what for political purposes, who is supporting something because, they're being pressured to do so. We have an extreme right-wing Supreme Court right now. That doesn't mean that they always 100% of the time decide the way that the right wing wants them to. There is still a level of jurisprudence that exists on the Supreme Court. It's not what it was. It's not what it should be. But
I would argue it's not so much that, you're right, it is that you have some prudence with that, but I do think that the Supreme Court, and maybe something that people don't really think about a lot, because they look at the Supreme Court and they say, wow, how horrible, they're like striking down all these things. They're very smart. They're very smart people. Like, you might want to look at them and claim that they're not. You want to look at like Amy Coney Barrett and be like, wow, what a moron, whatever.
Definitely not. Smart humans.
No, like, they're all extremely intelligent. And this is why I love doing, like in-depth reviews of cases here on this podcast, because when you read them, you kind of realize how insanely smart they're written. Even the ones that aren't, especially the ones that don't go the way we hope or expect. And they're written in such a way that they're not explicit in what they are doing. Like, the media is going to spin them, like the media might spin something and be like, oh my God, this means that, right? When the reality is like, well, no, it means something tangentially related, but it's actually a lot more nuanced than it. It doesn't just mean they're striking down whatever, right? Or they're like stripping away a right. No, it doesn't. It means it would mean, like, so I'm just taking arbitrary examples, but like, it means what they're actually saying is there is like, well, we're not taking away your rights. We're just saying that if you wanted to defend your right, you'd have to just go through more hoops and bounds. And I'm thinking right now of the case that was brought to them regarding, what was it? The injuncture that they were saying how you can't, how the lower courts can't issue an injuncture against the federal government for deportations, right? This happened a few weeks ago. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but that case was again, like, the response to that was super, super smart. I hated it. It was terrible decision, but like a very smart one, because they're not saying, because the media spins it, right? Saying, oh my God, now, you're saying the deportations of people who maybe citizens are okay and all these things. No, not what it says. It's it may lead the groundwork for that to happen. Yeah, but that's not what they're saying. They're smart. They're not saying that. They're not giving Trump the ability to deport whoever he wants. What they're saying is, now, if you were targeted by a deportation claim, right, and you were deported or whatever, and you shouldn't be, what we're saying is another court cannot, like, just protect you with a blanket injunction. It means you personally, or someone that represents you locally, meaning your city or your town's court, has to personally advocate for your specific behalf to them. And then we will decide on whether or not that was a unconstitutional, like, act. In which case, and they probably will say, yeah, that person shouldn't be deported. That's the kind of, like, spicy thing about it, right? Is that they're not saying, oh yeah, like, you can be deported now. No, they'll probably say that you couldn't be. They'll probably say, like, yeah, like, no, you shouldn't be deported. You should be protected. But what they're saying is, yeah, but we're not making it easy for you to get to this spot. We're actually going to make it harder, because we don't want to say that you can be constitutionally deported now, right? When you shouldn't be. What we're saying is, yeah, just, you can, when you get here, we'll vote in your favor, but getting here is going to be a lot harder. and we're not going to allow some court to just do that for everybody, because again, like, and in saying that, they are making it fundamentally impossible for every individual person who is impacted by this to make a claim at Supreme Court, because one, that's like ridiculously expensive and takes like a zillion years to even get there, and they know this. But again, they wrote that specific opinion in such an intelligent and sneaky way to ensure that they were not explicitly making an opinion on the legitimacy of deportations, of certain deportations, and that's the thing we have to kind of be concerned about, I guess, with the Supreme Court, is that that's what they're going to do. They're not going to just make a claim that we're going to like. They're going to make a claim that's going to be very sneaky, and they might find a way. I don't know what that way is. I am not nowhere near the legal expert that these people are. I don't think most people are, but I can, it's possible they can find a way to form an opinion that makes what California is doing in our kind of example here, right? What makes California doing unconstitutional or whatever, or just not, feasible, but somehow still keeping the door open for Texas to do it. Possible. I know I'm kind of retracting my own claim here from for your response, but I think you make a good point in that, I guess it is kind of possible for that to happen. They are smart enough to write opinions that, I don't know how they would do it, but I would not doubt that they are able to do that.
No, and they can find a way, and I don't trust them. I just don't trust the Supreme Court in any capacity. But what are we supposed to do? If we don't try with this, are we really going to let Texas just do it? We need to be challenging them at every step as a deterrent from doing this. And the reality is California probably could redraw their districts, and they could do even more than 5. You could make, with the way the coastline is set up and all of that, you could make districts in California in which you take up, and California has a lot of representatives, you could almost certainly find a way to change the competitive nature of a lot of California districts. We'll see what happens on that front, but
it hurts to hear, because I don't think either of us want that explicitly to happen. As a California resident,
no,
I do not want to see red voices in California be silenced forever or not have representation. I explicitly don't want that. I think it's really important that we have seats that other conservative people can elect their own folks to prevent a fully blue circle jerk of liberalism. I don't think that's helpful. I really don't.
And California already has that at the state level. We've talked about this before. The fact that the Republican Party is so wacko. So totally off the wall and out of the mainstream on most issues, and leads to a trifecta in California that is insurmountable for the Republican Party. The Republican Party is at third-party level of support in statewide elections in California, but it has led to Democrats who are complacent, who have no concern about being they have no concern about losing an election in a general election. They only have to worry about being primaried, which means they just have to be as far left to support the far left voters as possible to win a primary. And then they have no issue. And so what we've seen is this has led to a lot of dysfunction in California politics, in the same way that we see a lot of dysfunction in places like Arkansas, Mississippi. Those governments are not especially popular with their people either. But those people hate Democrats in the same way that a lot of Californians hate Republicans, so much so that it allows people to get away with governing in a non-bipartisan, in a very strictly partisan and aggressively extreme or increasingly extreme manner. And so that's the concern I have with this, but also Democrats can't lose on strategy anymore. They can't play the game fair and lose because the other side is cheating anymore. Like, the old line, Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. It's time for Democrats to start falling in line. Just say, you know what? We're going to put this out there. We care more about winning. We care more about winning than being right. And that's the thing that is the real issue with the Democratic Party. We have always valued being right more than we have valued having the power to do something about it. That has to change. And so, yeah, I'm for it. If the Republicans are going to change these districts, then Democrats have to respond in kind, and that sucks. I don't want that. I don't want this to be the case. But what choice do we have in this situation anymore? I don't know. Off of that topic, we should probably at least address Stephen Colbert and the kind of abrupt cancellation of the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, formerly The Late Show with David Letterman, a show that has a very, very long history now. And if you're unfamiliar with this story, I'm sure you've heard something about it, but yes, Stephen Colbert, in spite of being number one in the ratings, was informed that next May the show will be canceled. That is not, they're replacing him with someone else. The Late Show will be no more. And first and foremost, I want to be clear, late night TV is heading towards the sunset. They have gotten very, very close to the sunset at this point in time. Like, it is not wrong that even though Colbert is number one in the ratings, that show is losing money. We've seen it. The Tonight Show is now only 4 nights a week. The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, in theory, was supposed to be, 5 nights a week historically with Johnny Carson and Jay Leno, has been shortened to 4 nights a week. Some of the other shows, like Seth Meyers, who comes after Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers, they took away his band because, again, it's too expensive to have this on payroll. They're losing money on these shows. No one wants to invest ads in late night because no one watches late night during late night. They watch it on clips later. It is understandable and almost inevitable that Stephen Colbert was going to get canceled, that the show was going to be canceled in the coming years, as I think all of them will be within the next few years. And that's the end of a very, very long era of impacting American culture. That's a discussion for another time. What is especially interesting is that the timing of this really does seem to be in line with a rather cowardly settlement that Paramount, which owns CBS, just settled with Donald Trump. And about, the way a 60 Minutes interview was conducted last year.
That didn't even involve him.
No. It involved Kamala Harris. It's a ridiculous thing, and they settled it for $16 million because Trump has the power as the executive and is trying to get in the way of a sale of Paramount to a company named...
A merger.
Yes, a sale or merger to a company called Skydance. And so the timing seems odd, right? It seems odd that Skydance would happen. Colbert has skewered this payment. He skewered the purchase, all of this. He called it a, quote, big fat bribe, end quote. Trump hates Colbert. There's no love there. This feels very obviously like that these two things are related. There's nothing that anyone can do about it. That's kind of the sad thing, is that we are seeing Trump wield power in the private sector in a way that we have never seen before, and many of us predicted that this would be the case. But it is changing our society, and I think a lot of people are shocked, a lot of people are horrified. Grand scheme of things is Stephen Colbert is going to be okay. I think he's going to be fine.
Yeah, the guy can start a YouTube fucking channel tomorrow, and he'll make millions.
Yes,
and I hope he does, because I love his content. But
and I suspect
he's got so many options.
I suspect that he will move on to something else. There will be some sort of other opportunity waiting for him in short order.
Well, we see a lot of success with HBO shows.
Yeah.
Right. They have Last Week Tonight. They have Bill Maher's show. And they have success because it's streaming.
Yes, I did see several people. HBO should fire Bill Maher and replace him with Stephen Colbert. Yes, because that's the same audience. Get out of here.
Yeah, I think the point being is that format is always going to be an option for. Paramount could honestly create a new show, have Stephen Colbert on it, and just have it on Paramount Plus.
The problem with the late night show is that it's topical, and it tends to be topical to what has gone on that day. And that has really been why it's been so influential in pop culture for so long, is because it was, you have a show like John Oliver, you have a show like Bill Maher, that's once a week. We get kind of a summary of the week at that point in time. It's less topical. You can watch it a few days later and you still get a general sense of what's going on. It's the day-to-day stuff that you got the comedy about what was going on that day, and it was a means of people gathering information about what was going on through a certain lens, at the end of each day in real time. The loss of that is sad. The loss of that is disappointing and sad, and I don't see that happening on streaming. I don't see them coming out with a daily version of this. It's not going to happen.
It's different because when you look at, because I watch a lot of the HBO shows because it's easy to watch and it's right there, right? And I love them both. I think both Mayor's show and Last Week Tonight are both great shows.
You've opened.
For what
you've
they
said
offer.
It. You've opened up a.
Oh no! I said it. Oh god! I like Colbert Show.
Oh my god! You're a terrible person.
Oh no! Oh, cancel me. No, I like the show because I think that as opposed to doing just the kind of slapstick, jokes and riffs on the news of the day, people like Seth Meyers and Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Fallon, all these people do. They instead kind of do these more, and it's kind of a weird word to use, but these more immortal kind of takes where it's kind of they're addressing a thing, and you can watch that segment. John Oliver does this, I think, perfectly. It's he kind of makes these things where it's he talks about something that is relatively topical, but they're kind of timeless in the sense where you can watch the episode or even just that a segment of the episode today, tomorrow, last week, next month, 2 years from now, and it'll still kind of be relevant because the information is more timeless than say I'm making this joke because it happened today, and if you watch it tomorrow, it's not really going to be as funny because the shock value of it happening is already gone. The information is going to be dated, or it's going to have shifted in some way. I've watched Seth Meyers clips, weeks after they've aired, and I'm because I missed them or whatever, and I'm this is not as funny as if I watched this on TV the day of, because it's very different. It's just a different flavor of comedy, a different flavor of information processing. So totally.
Yeah, and the reality when you look at real time with Bill Maher, part of what draws people in, and again, I count myself included. Cancel me, come after me because I watch Bill Maher. I don't agree with him on everything he says. I don't. that's okay, because he brings on people who have a dialogue about what's going on. And it's one of the last places that we still see kind of a reasonable, rational discourse, the sort of thing that we're talking about here, between people of opposing opinions. It's one of the last places that still exists in society. And so Colbert is very much on one side. I love the guy. I think it's important. I'm upset that he's getting, essentially canned. No matter what they say, essentially he's getting canned. I hope that there is a platform for him to continue on doing what he does, because he is remarkable. He's hilarious. He seems like a wonderful human being by all accounts. Like, he was a perfect choice for CBS/Paramount, a decade ago when they chose him, or just over that. Like, it's sad to see things changing. It's wrong that it has to do with this merger when it clearly does. I don't care what anybody says, it clearly does.
I think it's business,
Yeah.
And it sucks, but because people are like, it's business, but then it's also political because Trump is involved.
Skydance is openly saying that they're going to use AI technology to root out DEI. I mean, now we've got the acronyms: AI rooting out DEI and IT getting involved. And anyway, that's crazy, and it's sad, and it's clearly political. But this is a reality of the situation that we're living in. The world is changing, and it's changing very rapidly. And I salute Stephen Colbert for everything that he's done. I salute all of the late night people. I really used to love watching late night. I don't watch it anymore. Not just because I'm an old person, but because, it is no longer the same. One, it takes a certain, scheduling and religion of scheduling.
Right, and that was something that I feel like Americans in the 90s, maybe even up to the early 2000s to mid 2000s had, and before then had. And I think now it's just, we don't have that anymore.
Streaming
we do not
changed everything.
We don't have the schedule that we used to have. Somehow it changed, where it's no longer dinner at 6. It's no longer huddled around a TV at 8 or 9 or whatever. And it's not I feel like that's not that's because I was a kid, and it's just kind of like families. It's no, the adults did that too. That wasn't just me as a kid watching TV at 9 or 8. It's the family was, meaning everyone in that family was available, and that was what we did every day. And somehow that almost that trope of the nuclear family, of having that schedule, it's gone. It doesn't exist. You can go further back, fireside chats with FDR. That was a thing that was so successful because Americans had the schedule of we gather around a radio, we turn it on, and we hear them talk about the war or whatever, all these things. And that was America's schedule. That wasn't just a family schedule. That was America's schedule. And
no, it's a great point. Look at movies. We used to, as a society, say, wow, have you seen this? And there was a pressure of have you seen this? Did you go to the theater and have a collective experience, a communal experience with various people? That has gone. And COVID did something to that. Streaming did something to that. The increasing gig economy and the idea of, not working 9 to 5, work hours have changed. That changed it. It is an inevitability. It's a sad inevitability, I think, because I do think it has impacted a lot of the problems that we talk about on this podcast in terms of, we don't have kind of common experiences as individuals anymore. We don't have the things that we used to be able to talk about.
Even SNL. Do you remember when SNL was the talk of the Monday? At school,
everyone
at
used
work,
to talk
whatever?
about SNL. everyone used to talk about, oh, did you see this episode of The Office? Did you see Friends this week? Did you see The Cosby Show? Like, did you see Fresh Prince? Like, the sitcoms. Did you see, even when you and I were growing up, like, House, American Idol?
I was going to say reality
Think about,
television.
like,
at the beginning,
yes,
still had that. Like, I didn't watch these shows specifically, but I remember even as late as middle school, I would overhear girls being like, "Did you watch the newest like Kardashians or whatever?" Like, those were still kind of there. It was petering out, but it was still there. There was still that semblance of that community.
I just remember like American Idol was such a huge component of society and talking about who you were rooting for and how you think they did this week. It was something that as a country we tuned into, and I watched, pardon the interruption, I'm a sports guy, I remember as a kid coming home, I'd watch PTI with Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon, a huge thing that, I used to watch Around the Horn, which just ended. That was an end of an era. If you're not familiar, these are your ESPN kind of sports talk shows, the early ones. But Tony Kornheiser, the sports guy, wanted to talk about American Idol at the end of every show of PTI and who he was rooting for and what he was excited about with Idol this week. And that was a big deal. And so the fact that we have gotten away from that, we've lost the things to talk about as a society. Not everyone goes and sees the Marvel movies anymore, especially since they just keep remaking the same movie over and over again.
And they suck.
They all suck. They don't.
I agree. It's almost like we lost things we can all agree on.
Yes. Right, well, that's a great transition, Tyler. Thank you, into things we should all agree on. Do you want to begin?
Sure, because I have a quicker one. And this is coming off of something that I sent you today, actually. And it does involve Obama. I have kind of a message, and it's funny because this message is a lot more for like Republicans than it is for Democrats, because I think they do it a lot more. But, whatever, it's for everybody. And my message is this. It is plain and simply, there is no point and there is no benefit to wasting our time talking about politicians who are no longer in politics. Again, this is something that the right does a lot more right now with talking about like Obama and the Clintons and stuff like that. But we do it too. Like we also talk about Obama all the time. I think it's not helpful because like these people are retired. Like they're not coming back to politics. They might make speeches here or there and like use their power to like, have some sort of like a platform, maybe like here or there, or go on podcasts, but they're not in the political sphere anymore. And I don't think it's helpful to continue to talk about them as if they are, because really what benefit is that making to you? Now I get for Trump it's all about distraction, stuff like that, and like blaming people, and people love hating on Obama, I guess, I don't know, but I do think that for people who talk about them in a more like serious like way, I just think it's very unhelpful. Like when they leave, they should no longer be talked about because like they're no longer relevant, right? Like who cares about the Clintons? They're not relevant. They don't have power anymore. Like let them fuck off and do whatever. Like who cares? Who honestly cares? Like, and this is, again, I say this because it's something I say this because this is of something that I sent you, but like, when you saw, like, I sent you that clip of Obama on his wife's podcast, on the In My Opinion podcast, and he's there, he's having a great time, he's talking about fucking ketchup. He's talking about how much he hates ketchup, and it's only for kids, and it's funny, it's hilarious, you can see how much joy he's having, and just, making hot takes about condiments. Like, that's what Obama's doing right now. he's retired and he's talking about condiments. He is not, there is no conspiracy. There is no like, oh my God, he's involved in the cabal. Like, that's the reality of what all these people are doing who are no longer in politics. And I think that's why it's so important that we just leave them alone, you know, because it's not helpful. It's not like they're not going to come back. There's no great return of Obama coming in to challenge Trump. Like, stop that. That's silly. That's ridiculous. Like, yeah, I think we've even said it as a joke before, but you know, the reality is like, it's not helpful to continue trying to rope people in who have no longer any desire or you know, political intention. It's just a waste of energy, you know. And so my things we should all agree on is that we have to leave politicians alone who are no longer in politics. They're not coming back. There's no point. Like, if they do come back, talk about them then, but it is unhelpful to the situation and to the discussion to continue resurrecting people who have since left office and are no longer involved in political decision making or strategy.
It's so interesting because on one hand, I agree with you. There's been a lot of people who have been recently calling for the former president, Obama, to be more involved in kind of the fight against Trump right now. And they're wondering, you know, where is Obama? Why am I not seeing this? It is not inherently Obama's fault that he is still the leader of the Democratic Party 10 years after he left office. It is not his fault that he is still, like, that we are still leaderless. Even when the Biden administration, like, there is no, like, one figure who can seemingly bring Democrats together better than Barack Obama. He seems to be the voice of reason in a lot of situations. Now, I'm not saying that they even agree with him or that he's beloved by all aspects of the party, but people do give him a bit of leeway. And as somebody who proudly considers myself an Obama Democrat, you know, the way that people in the past have said, oh, I was a Kennedy Democrat or whatnot, I'm an Obama Democrat. I will be probably from now till the day I die. This is the man who inspired me politically and who I believed put forth a sustainable, you know, if you could have built upon it, a sustainable method. Did I agree with everything he did? Of course not.
Right, but his version of the party is the one that, I agree with, I'm joining you here, is the one that resonates most with us. It was that version of the party.
And that's why. Because we've never found someone since then to be able to pick up a mantle and move forward. We are fractured in that way. And he was the last person who was able to kind of bring people on the far left and people in the middle together and create kind of a consensus, a common sense consensus. And so I find myself so dying to hear what he has to say still. And I get that maybe that's just me of a different age. And I think that somebody recently talked about how so interesting that Gen Zs don't have any of that. Like, Gen Z and lower did not get any of the Obama optimism. They don't understand the idea of optimism about change, and I don't blame them. That's not their fault. The millennials were the last ones that remember, like, what it felt like to believe that the country could actually start to get better and, like, improve. But Obama was talking in that same, you know, interview on the podcast, was talking about young men. And he said basically what you and I have agreed and been talking about for years, is that, you know, in many ways, those of us in progressive circles have not done a good job of catering to young men, and it's hurtful to women. The reality is it's hurtful to women if we ignore the plight of young men. That is something that pisses off a lot of people on the far left. God, I have heard from people in my family and all of this relating to that, and I accept that. I understand that there's a difference of agreement. But Obama lends a certain weight to that argument, to these kind of common sense points that no one else seems to be able to get a pass on. When he says it, the far left doesn't actively come out generally and like start throwing grenades at him. Anybody else says it, God forbid. But because he is Obama, because he is so beloved, and because Michelle is so beloved, and she's such, beloved and a progressive figure, they both get a pass on a lot of things. And so that's why I think they are still relevant and still exist. But you also make a great point, like, it is not their job to save us. Anyone that is like the Obamas need to come save the party, what are they supposed to do?
And it's also like they're not going to. I think that's also the thing. It's like you can beg all you want. They're not going to do that. Like,
they've made it very clear.
Yes, the Obamas
Michelle
are
is not running for
entering
office.
The political sphere again in a tangible way. Like, they can talk about it, that's fine, but yeah, it's like asking them and wasting time talking about Clintons and Obamas and people who just people who have left the party, whether it's in a negative or a positive light. Honestly, it's just it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of effort. We're losing the battle. We are losing the war. We cannot waste any more time. We cannot waste any more energy talking about bullshit that's not going to happen. We need every available breath to focus on only the things that matter at this point. We can no longer waste things. And talking about Obama coming back and all these like pipe dreams is a complete and utter waste of breath and energy. And that is going to be our downfall if we do not correct that soon. And I guess that's kind of like the main thing. It's like it's like, this may not be a war in a conventional sense, but it is definitely a war. It is a political battle that we are losing. We are getting gunned down, politically. And if we don't do anything, if we don't do something tangible and meaningful soon, we will be wiped out. Completely wiped out. Routed by the opposing force. And what we're doing right now, not just the pointing at ourselves, and blaming each other for things, which is a whole other problem, right? Between moderates and the far left, but also pointing to things that will not help, like Obama or whatever, right? Or, the ghost of fucking Reagan, pointing to these things is also not helpful. That's like, again, to take the war analogy, it's like shooting. It's like there's a guy in front of you with a musket and you have your musket, but instead of shooting him or pointing a gun at him, you're pointing a gun at like the fucking sky. And you're like, I'm going to shoot the sky because that's an easy target. And then
that worked for Hamilton.
Did it? Did it actually?
No, it did not. No. It did not work for Hamilton.
Again, it's like shooting the sky with your one bullet and then getting shot because now you're out of bullets and you're wide open. That's what's happening right now. So we have to focus. We have to aim at the proper target and stop wasting our time because we're getting skewered here and we can't afford to get skewered anymore.
It's a fantastic point. One last thing I have to add relating to this Obama thing. Why is it I'm at the gym, I'm looking up at the screen, and all I see running along the screen is Obama's addressed divorce rumors? Yeah, no, they fucking said it's ridiculous. Why is that the headline? That's so misleading. Also, who cares? It's not your business, but also it's a ridiculous thing that they have to even address it, and they very clearly rejected it. So why isn't the headline Obama's reject divorce rumors, not Obama's address? Because God, we have to have the people come back after the commercial.
It's the clickbait.
Oh, it's ridiculous. And that's on every freaking network. It doesn't matter. Fox, CNN, MSNBC, they all just profited off this ridiculous notion that the Obamas were going to get a divorce because what? Michelle didn't want to sit at Trump's second inauguration.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the shocker, the horror that she didn't want to be there with Donald Trump.
But you make
the man
it
who literally made like racist jokes, birtherism about her and her family.
right. But you make a good point about this specifically, and that point being like we have to look at it again when you look at strategy, right? The right does stupid things like that. They're attacking Obama or Clinton or whatever and saying like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. They're attacking them to get our attention. They are doing that strategically. They are not when they do that, they're not making a mistake like we are making a mistake if we talk about him. Because it's quite literally an effective tool that they're doing. Because what happens when they talk about Obama? We start talking about Obama. And if we're talking about Obama, what are we not talking about? The actual problems.
Yes.
So
well said.
we have to keep our eye on target because they're diverting our attention intentionally. For them, it's crazy strategic stuff that they're doing, and we're falling for it. Stop talking about Obama, laugh at the clips and move on. But this cannot be a part of the actual discussion that we're having. And this cannot be on the battlefield. It can't be.
It's a great point.
What you got for me?
Fantastic. Yeah, so I actually want to talk about my trip, this most recent trip, and I'm not going to share a bunch of stories of how wonderful it was, though it really was wonderful.
Sing us a jig.
Yes. Oh, and Heidi, 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 Heidi.
I love it.
Whose line is it anyway, fans? If you remember, you'll enjoy that. But I just got back from a trip, and I want to specifically focus on the part of my trip that was in Northern Ireland. It was not my first time to Northern Ireland, but my first time there in a decade. And it is a beautiful, beautiful place, and it is a complicated place. And if you're not familiar with the Troubles lasted for a period of roughly 30 years, in which Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom, the rest of the island of Ireland is its own independent nation. Northern Ireland, which consumes kind of the northeast portion of the island, is part of the United Kingdom, which is Britain, right? That is the historically Britain. And that, of course, has created lots of divides. Are we Irish? Are we English? What is the deal here? And for really starting in the 1960s, you saw the Troubles begin, which is a period in which there was significant violence and death. The IRA, which was advocating on behalf of the Irish population, who believed that Northern Ireland should be part of Ireland, were fighting against both the Crown as well as people who believe that Northern Ireland should be part of the United Kingdom. They don't want to leave. And if you go to some of the towns in Northern Ireland, that's Belfast, or I have to say both names, Derry/Londonderry. If you are, of course, a loyalist to Britain, you believe that, the town is called Londonderry. If you are not, you are entering Free Derry. If anyone has seen the show Derry Girls, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But literally a town in which they can't decide what the name of it is because half the population believes something different. And this is a society that is split not just on, what country do we belong to, but also on religion. The United Kingdom being a very heavily Protestant nation, Ireland being a very heavily Catholic nation. And that led to a lot of violence. I stayed in the Europa Hotel in Belfast. It is the most bombed hotel in the world. Not recently, we should say, but 33 times, I believe, in a span of 30 years was that hotel bombed, because it was where journalists used to go. It's also where Bill Clinton has stayed. I don't know what happened with Bill Clinton, but Anyway,
A lot of us don't know what happened with Bill Clinton.
that is true. But as I stood in Belfast and Derry/Londonderry, but specifically in Belfast, I stared at the peace walls, and I had signed them a decade ago, and they always get repainted over and you sign again and whatnot. But the peace walls are actual physical walls that were built to separate neighborhoods based on religious and political identity. And they still exist, and there's a hope that they can take them down, but even after all this time, they're still not sure that that's going to happen. And I was staring at them, and I wrote a nice message on there, but I had this sinking feeling. And it's not because Northern Ireland hasn't made progress. Even in the decades since I was last in Belfast, it has made a lot of progress. But the United States, on the other hand, has gone in the opposite direction. And I felt like I was looking at a future version of our country. One where we can't figure out how to coexist and live with each other peacefully. And these walls weren't built centuries ago. Some of them went up in my lifetime. And they're still there because the peace is still fragile. It's not fake, it's just young. It's a tired peace. And the people there keep to their own sides, even though the violence has mostly stopped. But you can still feel the echoes of what happens when people won't listen, won't bend, won't recognize the humanity on the other side of a line. And the thing that hit me the hardest was listening to the people of Northern Ireland talk about the United States. Talk about the role that the United States played in helping to bring peace to Northern Ireland. President Bill Clinton, Congress people, diplomats, and everyday Americans that have ties, family ties to Ireland and Northern Ireland, they were all a part of the reason that the Good Friday Agreement ever happened. I took a guide, we had a guided kind of walking tour through Derry/Londonderry. I don't want to offend anyone here. But the guide talked about how in the 1990s he went and saw Bill Clinton speak. And this vision of what America was and what Northern Ireland could be, and he was in tears as he was sharing this. He said, was the reason he didn't leave. They were going to leave their country because they did not want to raise their children in a society in which there was so much hate, and there were so many people that did leave. And he said, Bill Clinton, in that sense of optimism, and that speech that was given about the prospect of peace, is the reason that he stayed. He went home to his wife after that. They had a chat. They had a 3-hour chat, and they decided they were going to stay. And we, being the United States, were for a time a symbol of what coexistence could look like. We were imperfect. I'm not saying that the United States has ever been perfect in that sense, but it was a dream of how a wildly diverse group of people, religiously, politically, racially, culturally, could actually figure out a way to coexist, could actually make something work. We could argue like hell, yes, but we could still agree that the experiment of this country was worth the effort. And now, it seems like we're the cautionary tale. Now we are the ones who are tearing ourselves apart, brick by brick, distrust by distrust. And the walls might not be physical, not yet at least, but you can still feel them rising around neighborhoods, around news feeds, around family dinner tables. We used to be an example of what could go right, and now we're becoming the example of what happens when people give up trying. And that should terrify us. But more than that, it should unite us. Because surely there are some things we should all agree on. Like the idea that coexistence isn't surrender, it's survival. That compromise isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That democracy doesn't mean getting your way all the time. It means staying in the room with people you can't stand, because the alternative is that nobody gets a voice. And if we can agree on just that one little thing, then maybe we still have a shot. Maybe we don't need our own peace walls. Maybe we can remember who we were long enough to imagine who we could still be. But if we can't, well, then we're going to look a lot like Northern Ireland. And we're going to have troubles of our own. That's what I got for you.
That was beautifully said. And I think using that as a cautionary tale to what we are so quickly and frighteningly close to getting to as a country is something that we as a country need to realize that sooner rather than later, because if it's not sooner, there won't be a later. At least not a later for the country that we know it as today. It will be something different if we don't see that happen. If we don't see that change coming now, it will change and it will never be the same. Yeah,
so on that note, hopefully that's something for y'all to think about. You can tell that this was an emotional experience for me. It was, I was 22 years old the last time that I was in Belfast, and it was 2015. It was pre-Donald Trump. It was pre the world that we now live in. And it was a time period where I still was optimistic about the future of the world. And I'm trying desperately to still maintain some level of optimism that we can turn this shit around. The only way that that's going to happen is if we choose to do that. Because if we choose to stay on the sidelines or ignore it or let things go the way that they're continuing to go, we will end up like that. And we will end up in a situation where we will have people attacking each other violently. We already do have that, to be clear. But that's where we are, and that's why this podcast is so important to me. To be able to talk about how we try and turn around from this path we're on, which ends in just endless hate. So, thank you all, as always, for listening. We really appreciate it. I know it's a longer one. We had to catch up on a lot of information. And we will be back next week with more Reunited States. Please, if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram at ReunitedStatesPod and engage with us. Reach out. Let us know the things you want to hear about. And with that being said, from Manchester, New Hampshire, my name is Jesse Saywell.
And from Los Angeles, California, my name is Tyler Eric.
And this has been Reunited States. When the whole world has got you down and there's no one else around, turn that frown right upside down.